The local government news roundup is supported this month by the National Growth Areas Alliance Emerging Growth Areas Forum. Australia is working towards 1.2 million new homes over 5 years, and growth councils are on the front line of delivering them. It's not just about land release and planning approvals, it's about getting the roads, drainage, schools, libraries and community infrastructure right from day one. And that's the focus of the 2026 Emerging Growth Areas Forum, hosted by the National Growth Areas Alliance on Tuesday the 4th of August at Hume City Council Town Hall in Broadmeadows. It's running alongside the NGAA National Congress. For the first time, council leaders from emerging and established growth areas will come together to share what's worked and what hasn't in managing rapid growth, covering organisational readiness, working with developers, building community trust, and making the case for state and federal investment. If your council is facing rapid population growth, this is a forum built for you. Registration is open now to all local governments. Head to the NGAA website, ngaa.org.au, to secure your place. Coming up today, a councillor quits, triggering a by-election for Banyule. Pressure on the Victorian government to scrap next year's glass bin rollout. A warning to New South Wales councils thinking about big rate increases. New councillor access rules in Brisbane called an attack on transparency. A Tasmanian Council GM resigns after turbulent times. A rethink on Australia Day in the Adelaide Hills. And a council CEO finds devil in the detail of proposed new disaster recovery funding rules. Hello, I'm Chris Eddy, back with your Monday edition of news about and from councils across Australia and beyond. Brought to you by the Victorian Local Governance Association, our founding sponsor and the national broadcaster on all things local government. And support comes from Symphony 3, simple, connected customer experiences. And from Rath Engineering Development, smarter local government systems built from real on-the-ground experience. Thank you for listening wherever you are in Australia or around the world. Heading our Victorian report, Banyule City Council has announced the resignation of Beale Ward councillor Elizabeth Neely, effective on Friday, the 3rd of July. Councillor Neely had served on council since 2020 and held the mayoralty twice in the 2021-22 and 24-25 terms. The council has notified the Minister and the VEC, and a by-election will be held to fill the vacancy. No reason was provided for Councillor Neely's resignation. Pressure is mounting on the state government to scrap its mandatory July 2027 purple glass bin rollout. The Herald Sun reported that some Labor MPs are quietly pushing for the deadline to be abandoned amid growing cost of living concerns. More than 50 Victorian councillors are currently resisting the $75 million recycling scheme, warning that compliance costs will heavily burden local ratepayers. Some have formally resolved to postpone the rollout, and the article says it's unclear what would happen to those councils that don't meet next year's deadline. The Hume community is still coming to terms with a violent incident in Craigieburn last week in which a teenage boy lost his life. The Mayor, Councillor Carly Moore, says the tragedy has hit the community hard and hit close to home for her personally.
So a very tough time in our community at the moment. As you say, it did hit really close to home. Not only is it physically close to my home, but certainly I've got teenage boys, so something that hasn't had an impact on me personally. And I think it's fair to say that our community is devastated, shocked. We're all really sad that, a young boy would lose his life in a way like that.
Councillor Moore says her own 13-year-old son was nearby shortly before the incident occurred.
My 13-year-old son had gone to have a kick of the football with two of his mates over the school holidays. He'd walked to McDonald's, which was only a few hundred metres away, to get a Slurpee on the way home, and I had just picked him up from there. So, really does hit very close to home.
The council says it's working with Victoria Police and has mobilised an outreach program at Craigieburn Central as it looks to better support and engage young people in the area. My full interview with Councillor Carly Moore is coming up this week on VLGA Connect, out on Friday. Hindmarsh Shire Council has issued an urgent community notice following reports from the Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Action regarding the illegal use of glue traps to control pest birds. The council reminded residents and businesses that the sale and use of glue traps is strictly prohibited in Victoria, and carries significant penalties. The unlawful traps have reportedly impacted native wildlife, placing additional strain on regional wildlife rescue groups. In more Hindmarsh news, the council is stepping up its advocacy for external funding, warning that small rate bases cannot sustain major infrastructure demands. The council has formally requested state and federal assistance for a $5.4 million replacement of the ageing Japarut Weir, noting that current co-contribution requirements are financially impossible for small rural councils. Hindmarsh has also added its voice to a call for a dedicated rural council fund to address growing disparities in road maintenance and asset management. Work has officially begun on Warrnambool's first pocket forest at the local community garden. Using the intensive Miyawaki planting method, the project aims to establish 500 native trees and shrubs rapidly to accelerate habitat creation in Albert Park. Funded through a Bupa Healthy Cities Land Care grant, the initiative is a trial collaboration between the council and multiple community partners. And Whittlesea's Thomastown Ward Councillor has been officially sworn in 3 weeks after the election result was declared. Sharman Tiwari was overseas at the time of the declaration and has now taken up her new position, filling the spot vacated by Nick Brooks, who resigned more than 6 months ago. New South Wales Local Government Minister Ron Honig has urged councils to exercise extreme caution before pursuing significant rate rises. Speaking during a visit to Wagga Wagga, the minister highlighted that communities are heavily impacted by current cost of living pressures, suggesting that municipalities look inward at their own efficiency levels before raising fees. The Border Mail reported the warning comes as Albury City Council undergoes community consultation on proposed special rate variations of up to 42% over 2 years to service a $20 million debt. Minister Honig has met with civic leaders at Snowy Valleys Council to discuss the pathway towards council de-amalgamation by July 2028. He emphasised the complexity of the transition, noting that future operating models must be carefully designed to reset services and align with the distinct needs of both northern and southern communities. Minister Honig also visited Coolamon Shire for briefing sessions on key regional challenges. The council said the productive discussions focused on financial sustainability, the code of conduct and meeting practices. Councils across New South Wales are rolling out new projects aimed at strengthening community connection and tackling hate, racism and discrimination. The latest round of social cohesion grants for local government will fund locally designed initiatives, including youth-led engagement programs and community training to prevent and report racial discrimination. The government says the program supports practical long-term anti-racism strategies and has delivered more than $2.7 million to local governments since 2021. Randwick City Council has welcomed a $34 million funding boost from the New South Wales Government for shark spotting drones. The allocation is part of a larger $120 million beach safety package. Mayor Dylan Parker says the increased funding will allow drones to patrol popular, unpatrolled surfing locations for longer periods. The council also resolved last week to hold a joint public information session with the government on shark mitigation technologies, behaviours and evidence. Sutherland Shire Council is set to trial a targeted parking ban on trailers to combat growing congestion in residential and sporting zones. Under the 6-month trial scheduled for late July, new zones will be introduced at 5 key locations, according to the St George and Sutherland Shire leader. Moree Plains Shire Council has announced plans to transition its tourism services back under direct council operations. Following a collaborative review to reduce duplication and maximise ratepayer value, the council will provide 6 months of interim funding to Tourism Moree while planning the transition. A detailed report on the service delivery model is scheduled for an ordinary council meeting in September. And Walgett Shire Council has commenced work on a shire-wide crime prevention plan, partnering with specialist consultants following a recent rise in local crime. The long-term strategy will involve extensive community consultation with New South Wales Police, local schools and Aboriginal organisations to establish practical safety measures across the region. Let's go to Queensland, and Brisbane City Council is facing backlash over new rules that limit what councillors can see and ask about in council. The Brisbane Times reported that legislative changes passed by the Queensland government mean councillors can only access documents deemed directly relevant to their ward, while the Lord Mayor and committee chairs are exempt in certain cases. Opposition and crossbench councillors say it's an attack on transparency and accountability, arguing decisions often affect residents across the whole city. The council says the move cuts red tape and costs. Representatives from 3 remote Gulf of Carpentaria councils have travelled to Canberra to protest proposed changes to federal disaster funding. Leaders from Burke, Mornington and Carpentaria Shire councils warn that shifting to a 50-50 cost-sharing model under the disaster recovery funding arrangements will leave isolated local governments unable to fund essential infrastructure repairs. South Burnett Regional Council has formally opposed those disaster funding changes, warning a shift in the activation trigger could hurt councils more than the 50-50 funding split. Here's the council's CEO, Mark Pitt.
They have just very quietly put that threshold is going to go up to 2.7 million. Anything from $250,000 to 2.7 won't be a declared event. That one probably tweaked my eyebrows more than the 50-50 funding split.
Mr Pitt says councils pay that trigger amount and it could wipe out entire budgets.
Well, our resale budget for a year is $3 million. So if all of a sudden, if 2.7 becomes the new trigger, that's our entire resale budget gone. I mean, like you just can't recover that sort of resort funding, or will impact other service delivery badly.
South Burnett faced 3 flooding events in 1 year alone, and Mark Pitt says the trigger change poses a bigger threat to councils than the funding split itself. We go next to Bundaberg, where the council is implementing targeted CCTV installation, increased monitoring and a commercial security review at the Bundaberg General Cemetery, following recent incidents of vandalism and theft. Mayor Helen Blackburn said the new site hardening measures aim to balance improved security for grieving families while maintaining respectful public access. A new $5 gate fee has come into effect at Gold Coast waste and recycling centres. The council says the fee helps ensure that people who use landfill services contribute to the cost of managing them, offsetting the state's waste disposal levy that the council has covered for residents until now. Most recycling and green organics are still accepted for free. Meanwhile, Redlands City Council is introducing a fair use policy at its mainland waste centres from October to curb rising utility costs. Residents will be limited to 12 free visits annually for general and green waste. The council says data shows just 9% of users account for 40% of the facility's landfill. And the city of Moreton Bay has introduced robotic companion pets to 3 of its local libraries to support residents living with dementia and their carers. The 2 robo-cats and 1 robo-dog feature lifelike movements and simulated heartbeats designed to reduce anxiety and combat social isolation. The initiative expands on the council's existing dementia-friendly programs, with the robotic pets also available to other branches via mobile dementia kits. A bit of news out of Tasmania today. Northern Midlands Council has officially parted ways with long-standing General Manager Des Jennings following his resignation after 12 years in the role. Mayor Mary Knowles praised Mr Jennings' leadership and community infrastructure legacy, calling his departure a significant loss. His exit follows a turbulent period. Earlier this year, a councillor publicly pushed for his termination during a lengthy personal leave absence, which came amid a Supreme Court ruling that found the council's use of ratepayer funds for Mr Jennings' past legal fees was illegal. Tasmanian Council candidates will not be required to disclose political donations ahead of October's local government elections. Despite state government plans for a $50 disclosure threshold, the necessary legislation has been delayed. The Mercury reports Tasmania remains the only Australian jurisdiction without a mandated donation disclosure scheme for local campaigns. Kingborough Council will vote today on the land arrangements for the Tasmania Devils' new high-performance training base at Kingston Twin Ovals, south of Hobart. Pulse Tasmania reported the proposed long-term leases would secure the club's training and admin home, with a backup reversion release to the state government if the club's lease is terminated. The council also wants to grant construction licences so work can begin before the site title is subdivided. And new CCTV images and internal emails from Hobart City Council show the Deputy Lord Mayor Zelinda Sherlock was filmed taking alcohol and snacks from the Town Hall's Members' Lounge on days when Council wasn't sitting. A Pulse Tasmania report reveals that the documents, released under Right to Information laws, show staff had been tracking missing stock for months. A handover memo says Sherlock believed the items were a fringe benefit. She's since apologised, saying she misunderstood the policy. In South Australia, Adelaide Hills Council is considering reversing its decision to move Australia Day events away from January 26th. Following a persistent campaign from a local ratepayers group, elected members have requested a report exploring options to affirm, amend or rescind the original 2023 policy. According to the Advertiser, a formal report will be presented to Council in September. The City of Burnside has suspended weed management activities in public spaces following community concern over a social media video. The administration has launched an investigation into field practices and regulatory compliance, alongside a comprehensive review of operational supervision and training. And the council has defended a competitive tender process that resulted in the abrupt replacement of a long-term contract fitness instructor. Despite community backlash over a perceived lack of notice, the council's CEO Julia Grant says a rigorous procurement evaluation was strictly followed. The Advertiser reported that some affected participants are now seeking refunds for prepaid sessions. And now making news out of WA, a fourth City of South Perth councillor has resigned. Councillor Jacqueline Raison quitting the Mill Point ward seat with immediate effect late last week. It follows the resignations of Tim Howling, Hayley Prenderville and Bronwyn Waugh over 3 days in June. Gavin Denton and Bronwyn David will be sworn in on Thursday as next-placed candidates to fill the Mill Point vacancies, and a by-election will be held in September for the Moresby and Como ward seats. The City of Wanneroo has withdrawn its support for the Mindarie Regional Council's waste-to-energy procurement process. Perth Now reported the council made the decision in a confidential session, citing concerns the project could extend the operational life of the Tamala Park landfill beyond its scheduled 2029 closure. And Fremantle Council has voted unanimously to ban dogs from all playgrounds, despite public feedback showing most respondents opposed the change. Perth Now reports the new rules also restrict dogs in several key areas, including the Fremantle Arts Centre grounds and Fremantle Oval, though some reserves were kept as dog exercise areas after a late amendment. Council says there'll be clearer signage and a 6-month education period before enforcement begins. Let's head overseas now for some global news. A Reform UK-led council in Nottinghamshire is facing fresh criticism after a £75,000 scheme to hang union flags across the county failed to attract a single business sponsor. The council had claimed the project wouldn't cost taxpayers anything, but The Guardian reports the authority is paying the full bill. Political instability continues at Kirklees Council following a second high-profile resignation from the Reform UK group in just 1 week. Newly elected councillor Susan Maxfield has resigned as party whip to sit as an independent. That follows the recent health-related departure of colleague Craig Wiles. According to BBC News, the political fallout is deepening leadership anxieties for the authority, which has been operating without a leader for nearly 2 months. And Cornwall Council has intensified its planning enforcement, targeting caravans sited on agricultural land. The Guardian reported that half of the council's recent infringement notices focus on these temporary dwellings, sparking concerns from housing advocates over the heightened risk of homelessness for vulnerable residents. To Canada now, and documents obtained by CBC News show that Ontario Province's expansion of strong mayor powers to more than 200 municipalities moved ahead despite consultation feedback described as predominantly negative. The records show hundreds of responses warning the powers are unnecessary and undemocratic. The government says the measures are necessary to speed up housing and infrastructure decisions. More than 100 people rallied in Niagara Falls on Friday, seeking an apology over comments by the city's mayor and a former CAO linking Saskatchewan First Nation evacuees with homelessness. Mayor Jim Diodati apologised on the steps of City Hall, saying he regretted the hurt caused and he took responsibility. CBC News reported that about 1,100 Kashechewan residents have been living in local hotels for 6 months after a water infrastructure failure and sewage flooding forced an emergency evacuation. In New Zealand, the Mayor of Auckland, Wayne Brown, has backed a single unitary authority for Northland ahead of the New Zealand government's August 9 restructuring deadline. Speaking to the Northern Advocate, Mr Brown has urged the region's 4 councils to develop their own amalgamation proposal rather than leave the decision to Wellington. Mayor Brown is also defending an almost 8% average rate rise after the council signed off on its annual budget. Meanwhile, Marlborough District Council is asking residents for feedback on a possible merger with neighbouring Kaikoura District Council. A public survey is open and runs until noon on Tuesday of this week. The council says no decision has been made, but the results will help shape any future consultation if a formal proposal is put forward. And finally today, an update from Yawata City in western Japan after Mayor Shoko Kawata announced she'll step back from her duties around her mid-September due date, the first Japanese mayor to ever take maternity leave. There's no legal maternity leave mechanism for local elected officials. Kawata says she'll delegate mayoral duties to her deputy for roughly 4 months while staying in touch weekly. The issue is now at the centre of a national debate, with supporters saying it's a vital step for working parents and women in politics. But critics argue public leaders shouldn't take extended leave. BBC News has more on the emerging controversy and a deep-seated belief in some quarters that people in public office should abandon their private life and devote themselves fully to their community. And that's the latest from the Roundup, edition number 611, recorded on the morning of Monday, the 6th of July 2026. The podcast is brought to you by the Victorian Local Governance Association, the national broadcaster on all things local government, with support from Symphony 3, simple, connected customer experiences, and Rath Engineering Development, smarter local government systems built from real on-the-ground experience. If you'd like to know more about any of the stories in today's episode, you can find a transcript and story links by heading to www.lgnewsroundup.com. The Local Government News Roundup is recorded in the city of Greater Geelong, Victoria, on the land of the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation. Until next time, thanks for listening and bye for now. Support for the Roundup comes from Symphony 3, allowing councils to connect their systems securely, to automate their data flows and to monitor performance in real time. And right now, councils are lining up for their own emergency dashboard, like the one that Symphony 3 has created for the city of Greater Bendigo. The dashboard helps keep the community safe and prepared before, during and after emergencies. It pulls together live data, including weather data, traffic data, emergency incidents, unplanned and planned disruptions, news and social media feeds. Visit www.symphony3.com to learn how you can get an emergency dashboard for your community.